So a very warm welcome to everyone for today's talk on towards the new landscape of learning opportunities, organized as part of Spark scheme for promotion of academic and research collaboration, grant management of India, and anchored by Center of Education in teacher education. Um I would also like to add that we would like to dedicate this talk today and the panel that's going to follow the talk today to Professor Parshuraman, who has been extensively supportive to establishing the CET and also its programs. Now, I would like to invite Professor Shalini Bharat, Director of TIS, to chair the public talk and the panel.
So, welcome to everyone to Tata Institute of Social Sciences and to all the colleagues and the panelists. Friends, during the last 2 years, specifically 2020 and 2021, the higher education sector in India has not only been experiencing the global COVID pandemic, just like any other sector across the globe, but the opportunity that the National Education Policy 2020 provided to restructure and re-engineer the sector towards making India a global powerhouse of knowledge creation and an innovation and entrepreneurship giant has been quite phenomenal. And I think we all have recognized how well placed we were in terms of receiving some of this kind of a policy. But of course, the COVID pandemic was also there. And in this fast changing scenario, technology has played a distinct and a hugely impactful role. But for technology, quite clearly, the world would have been in a bigger mess and disruption due to the pandemic. So technology, in a way, has helped us face the epidemic and this disruption in a very, very, powerful way. With technology occupying center stage in the education sector, as also in many other sectors, there has been a huge upsurge in innovations in teaching and learning models, applications of technology for better outcomes, new age research and training opportunities for skilling, etc. TIS also, as an education institute, has been exploring and implementing a number of innovative models and pedagogies to address the emerging challenges facing the education sector in the country. And in our own ways, we have tried to also look at the issues of inequities because of how we have been using technology for education. It is in this context that I'm very happy to have you all come for this public talk by Professor Vijay Kumar. The topic or the theme of this talk is towards the new landscape of learning opportunities. Professor Vijay Kumar, a very warm welcome to you. Let me say a few words about Professor Vijay Kumar. Professor Vijay Kumar is currently Senior Advisor to the Vice President for Open Learning at MIT. He has served as Director of Academic Computing at MIT from 1996 to 2022, a very long stint, and played a pivotal role in launching OpenCourseware, for which MIT is widely known. He was the founding executive director of the Abdul Latif Jameel World Education Lab, which is now a flourishing community of teaching and learning researchers and practitioners in PK-12, higher education and workforce learning at 45 member organizations in 20 countries. He was co-principal investigator of the Connected Learning Initiative, a flagship project of the Center of Excellence in Teacher Education, which has organized this talk. And the other partners, of course, were MIT and Tata Trusts. This collaboration led to the CET developing expertise in EdTech in school and teacher education. His current visit and talk is a part of the Spark grant for collaboration between the TIS and MIT. Professor Vijay Kumar, may I request you to make your talk?
To get my open courseware ready. Thank you very much, Professor Shalini Bharat. Professor Padma Sarangapani, I take particular delight in saying it, the name with all the titles. My wonderful colleagues from CET, our co-conspirators, and the distinguished gathering over here. I'm truly delighted and privileged to get this invitation. This is, in many ways, even before the center was shall I say, constructed or assembled, in a programmatic sense, this was a second home for me for many years. We, right from the conceptualization of the CLICS initiative to having a vehicle to engage in conversations, serious conversations about educational change, and this today's talk is just one tiny point, in that continuum of change, And I will talk to you about what are the kinds of things that I'd like to talk about, the metadata. First, I was thinking that, and we've had some yesterday. We had a 2-hour session with the students, and then the discussions with the faculty, and it's all reflects the seriousness of the questions, the discourse. It reflects the seriousness of the change agenda at hand, the necessary change agenda at hand, and it reflects the energy and enthusiasm that is available to engage in that change constructively. And I think it will be our loss not to capitalize on that, not to leverage on that, because God knows there's change needed. So there's this heavily talked about Yogi Berra, who's a lot of management speakers associate, people who make jokes about. And Yogi Berra has this line about the future ain't what it used to be. It's a very profound statement, but it's dramatically true right now. And in some case, we saw some of the things that we're doing, we're engaging in because we thought it was, like we were saying earlier on, it was nice to do, and now we're realizing that it's a must do, it's critical to do. We're engaging in this change because we have to, right? And we talk about the reason, and what I'd like to do today is say, look, what are the demand conditions that require this change, that are calling for this change? Some of it is extremely familiar, but I try to put my own color, some lenses on it. And then before we all start reacting and start thinking, oh my God, this is daunting, this is too much, try to think about what might be on the supply side of the equation that gives us the confidence to engage with this and not look at this as something that we have to, in a very, very scared, reactive way, approach in a reactive way, in a very proactive way, construct interesting possibilities of the future. And so, whenever I'm introduced, and there are all these titles, assistant provost, associate dean. Sometimes I joke that the significance of a person in an institution is inversely proportional to the length of their title, and mine was very long, But the thing that I really like to point out about my 2 dimensions of my background, which I think are particularly relevant to today's conversation, is that my preparation was as an educational futurist. That's what I did my PhD, future studies in education. Came from engineering management, and I look at all of us as futurists. And what does it? So in our future studies program, there was a sticker that we had, which said that a futurist is one who makes future possibilities more real for others. So it's about, and it was constructing, co-constructing preferred futures. In that sense, we're all co-constructing preferred futures. And what I hope to do is spark some ideas about what might this preferred future look like. We all have ideas. We want. I used to love the line that President Abdul Kalam had. When he'd say that the purpose of education is to bring a smile to a child's life, to a child. So there are various ways of expressing that preferred future. We want gainful employment. We want to increase the social capital of folks, etc., etc. But in some particular ways, when it comes to learning, we might want to think about what are some of these aspects of preferred futures that we want to co-create. The second part of my background that I like to point out is that my research was in innovation diffusion. So I went with, and I won't, well, this was the late 80s, or this was actually the mid 80s. I went to Lesotho in Southern Africa with these devices. I went as a consultant to Texas Instruments and USAID and took these devices to elementary schools in Africa, speak and spell and speak and math. And the idea was to look at their implications for literacy and numeracy education in those schools. I also taught logo, which we'll talk about in the schools. But my research work was really in stepping back and saying this happened. What are the conditions? Because my topic was planning for the introduction of technological innovations in education, some generalized principles to increase the likelihood of their success. And it won't come as a surprise to many of you when you find out that the technology had some reasons to do with successful adoption diffusion, but it was largely a lot of factors around it, infrastructure, teacher preparation, then of course all the way from to the politicians like it or the administrators ready. So the successful diffusion was a very, very systemic occurrence, systemic phenomena, and we had to look at the conditions and see how do you enable the right sets of conditions for this thing to achieve the kind of results that we anticipated when we set forth on this journey of change. So what I'd like to do is point out, illuminate some of those dimensions of change today, and then perhaps we can talk about what are the conditions for the preferred futures that we want. So like I said, the supply side, there are various forces. Why do we need change? Why is the future not what it used to be, like Yogi Berra said? And we know these reasons. We talk about Amazon, every activity because of the increased centrality of digital technologies is a software service. Uber is a software service, right? Transportation is a software service. In fact, my colleague Michael Saylor once said, Vijay, when we study geography, we used to look at an atlas, or we look at maps. Those things became a million images on Google Earth. Now it is an intelligent service on my watch, right? So every hard product has been transformed into an intelligent soft service. Think of the implications of that in terms of the kinds of competencies, skills that we want, in terms of how we want. And it's not the fact that it has become a thing, it was something else, it has become this, but the fact that that will occur in it's not the only time it's going to occur. And especially when you look at the stuff, that kind of change is going to keep happening. So how do you prepare our learners to A, react to the world, B, navigate the world, even more importantly, create the kind of change, that new world, the equivalent of the new intelligence service that you want to create. So that's there. And we have to think about, and that's reflected in the curriculum, what kinds of skills do we want, what kinds of attitudes, dispositions that we want for these learners to have. So we hear this, we want them to be very agile in their learning behaviors, in what they learn, how they learn, so that they can respond to the competencies required by these new markets, these new economies. There is something that I want to say about this reaction thing. You see that little picture on the right over there. Typically, our tendency is, oh my God, this is happening, technology is happening, manufacturing has changed, medicine has changed. How do we, we have to react to it, respond to it. But I want to emphasize the proactive dimension. We also look at opportunities that technology can bring in order to make a richer, more effective, more productive workspace or learning environment. That excerpt on the right where it says augmented reality program is actually an excerpt from my colleague, George Westerman, who in JWell used to handle workforce learning. This is in his book. He's an expert on digital transformation. So that event is from Newport News, which is a shipbuilding yard in Virginia. Now, people go, the workers over there, they have, they're going and screwing these plates on the side of a ship, they're welding, but they don't know what they're doing. They do that. If they make a mistake, they don't know the effect it has on subsequent parts of the production process. It's breaking things up. They have no concept. And so the failure rates are high. Even more important, they think their job is to just go and take this plate and drill it and make it there. They have no concept that they're building this mega ship, that they're doing this very important project. So what they did was, so productivity was low, failure rates were high, morale was there, down. So what these people said, oh, let's look at this. They outfitted them. We were laughing this morning when Padma and I were talking about school kids with those glasses. So they actually outfitted them, sorry, Padma, with these with this VR glasses and stuff, so that they could see the effect. So if they made a mistake, they could see the downstream effects of the damage that they were creating through the error. So it made them more conscious of what they were doing, right? The other thing was they suddenly realized that they're building this ship, this vessel, which could be used as, God forbid, an aircraft carrier or a tanker or whatever, right? And it increased the morale. And you look at the case in his book, shot up by some 74, 78% when they did morale of the workforce, So productivity increased, efficiency increased, morale increased. The whole point of this long thing is that there are good opportunities to pursue. So our whole stance towards technology and thinking about how it might affect the workplace, how it might affect learning, does not have to be, sort of a defeatist, oh my God, I got it. It's a hint that I should move on. So, so it doesn't have to be like that. The other part that we look at when we look at this on the demand side, and this gets talked about variously, excuse me, is when I talk about this new generation of non-traditional learners. Typically, when we talk about non-traditional learners, we say millennials, these people have extreme facility with technology, yeah, all that is fine. There are a whole set of learners who have been perennially in the realm of unmet needs, whom we have never gotten to, people who need to take advantage of education. And those are, people who are differently abled, right? I mean, yesterday I talked about this line about, we talk about quality learning at scale. And I was making a very tired Vijay Kumar line that scale is not a scalar, it is a vector. That scale doesn't mean taking one thing and putting it out to everybody, that you have to look at differentiated learning. People come with different aspirations, motivations, learning needs, career trajectories, interests, and how do you manage to efficiently provide learning solutions to that range of diverse audiences that you have. And so I like sometimes in a very say that all of us in some sense are displaced learners. Some of us are locationally displaced, forbidding geography, dark corners of the world. Some of us are vocationally displaced. We're in jobs, we want to get out, we want to get new skills, we want to try different trajectories. So there's this whole new realm, and everything is a limiting case of one or the other, right? I also like to say that everyone is a differently abled learner. Some have math challenges, some have emotional challenges. And so when we design with that super case of thinking that how do we design for diversity, how do we design for inclusion, then we're talking scale. How do you design for the fact, and this is what we're seeing, because when that change through the centrality of technologies happens in the workplace, we find people want to migrate from jobs, we work a lot with refugees. We work with teachers in Jordan or people who have come. In fact, there's a whole program that will talk about the MicroMasters program, which is how do you provide professional learning, continuous professional learning opportunities. People who have left, have been forced to leave either their jobs or their regions because of social political crisis today. Tomorrow, it could be because of global warming, right? So they are going to migrate. Those displaced learners are your new non-traditional learners. So this is the demand side of the equation. And you say, oh my God, that looks daunting. How can you do all that? So this is where I turn on my TV salesman persona and says, don't worry, we have good solutions. On the supply side, we have some interesting things. By the way, when we were talking in your office, this is what I slipped in after I came down. These conditions, they existed before COVID. Okay. The difference is that we said, look, this is an opportune moment. We can do different things. So in 2020 and before, BC is before COVID, we were going around talking, people talking everywhere, saying that, look, you have to think about reconstructing it. When we were doing clicks, these are the kinds of things that we want to do for the new learner. And then along comes COVID, uninvited, right? And what you hear is that this is no longer a nicety or an opportune moment. It's a critical moment. Okay. And there are some, and we were talking about the fact that we went into this technology thing for business continuity reasons, and we did some things accidentally well, some things perhaps intentionally well. But what we realized that, oh, we got to really think, because all these things that we're talking about need to be configured in interesting ways, because now it is a must do, and must do leaves even less chance for not doing it appropriately. So that's the thing. Now, the supply side, before you get daunted, say, okay, and this is what we've been saying, that we got some forces over here, and what on the one hand, the one big force that we have is what I call digital learning, this field of digital learning. And I added innovation. Later on, I'm going to, sometimes you think it's a very common, pretentious term, disruptive, but it has significance, the term disruptive, and I'm going to come back to that, the disruptive dimension of innovations. But digital learning itself, I would encourage you to think generously about the definition of digital. It is not just a technology. It is not just online. It is not the onlineification of what you're doing on site. We are talking about reconstructing, for instance, and we'll come to that, but it's AR, VR, it's hardware, architecture, software. That family of things is under the heading of digital learning innovation, right? It's that whole package. And why I say, if you look at it, every point in the value chain of learning is prone to innovation because of digital technologies and what we have learned about learning. A lecture is a 6-minute topical segment video. It can be immediately followed by, if it's a fuzzy concept, by some visualization, some simulations that allow you to understand that better. You do a quick test immediately. Typically, I show these things where you might do some quick testing of some concept that you've learned. And if you don't do, you can go back and learn it. So it's this frequent formative assessment. So lectures have been reconstructed. It's the latency between being exposed to a concept and being tested and given feedback on your learning of the concept is reduced. I mean, our days, we did that. 6 months later, you might have a test, right? Or a lab associated with that. But by which time it's out of sight, out of mind. So you have reconstructed everything from the lecture to credentials is prone to innovation. And I will illuminate some possibilities that highlight what I'm trying to talk about is prone. So that's how we think about digital learning innovation on the supply side, big force. A very, very important part, and actually I write about them as separate points, I talk about them as separate points, but they're extremely intimately connected, is what we're learning about the science of learning, informed by brain science, informed by cognitive sciences, some of which we have known for 100 years, some of which we are realizing now. And now have even more opportunity to analyze and learn because we have so many learners who are learning simultaneously in different ways through MOOCs, etc. But and I'll point to some of those dimensions, which is informing how we design the digital learning experiences, which is informing how we address our goals, our desire to look at people who might be differently able to provide differentiated learning opportunities at scale. That's the second supply side force. The open movement, you know facets of it over here. The center itself is a very big advocate and embracer of open. I have been associated with open for a very long time. We never fail to say this. 1999, 2000, MIT put out the content of all its courses on the web for free for the world. And it was a very important moment. And sometimes I like to say the important point was not that. And by now there are, N million users who have been looking at that content. We put stuff over it, around it, so that people can use the content of those courses. At that time, we made a very important distinction also. And this is a reflection of the change that has happened. When we did open courseware, there was a challenge. And I remember when our president said, my God, Columbia is doing that. They put content.com. They are monetizing their content. Stanford and Chicago, they are doing Unix. They're monetizing their content. What are we doing? Have we missed the boat? How are we responding to the opportunities the internet provides? And this faculty, the Council on Education Technology, and I used to run that council, there was a lot of thinking. And they said, well, in order to answer that question, we should think about what is the real value proposition of education at MIT. And there are lots of terms thrown around: intensity, drinking from the fire hose, very MIT terms, about the learning experience. I said, yeah. What does that mean? And I said, well, till they came down to say that, look, the real value is a very high bandwidth of interaction between great students and great faculty. MIT does spend a lot of energy recruiting great students, great faculty. But then we are a research institution. We want to bring the tools, the joy, the practice of research into undergraduate education. Right? This, at that time in 1999, we only knew how to do that in face-to-face experiences, hands-on, situated learning experiences. So we said, we'll take a picture of that and post it on the web to share MIT. So there used to be a disclaimer very clearly saying that OpenCourseWare is a publication of MIT courses. It is not an MIT education, okay? And there were all this, but it had everything: the lectures, the courses, the syllabus, even the snapshots of the assessments, the interactions, etc. But it was very clear it was not that, right? But it was openly available. Fast forward to 2012, when you say, well, we've learned a thing or two about all this, we can actually not compromise on the hardness of an MIT learning experience, but we can do it online, and then along edX, the platform, we do MIT X courses when we would say these are MIT hard learning experiences because we had learned the stuff. So we don't have to compromise the online quality. It's not perfect, but we can. And so we went that way, but made them widely open. And why were they open? Because there were no access barriers. Of course, there's a lot of debate we can have about who really got to it, but the aspirations met. Right? But the fact they were open was because they said, look, we're not going to have any entry barriers. We will tell you will succeed if you have these kinds of things. But come in, right? And so you started opening up. So the open movement is all that in terms of myself around the same time when OpenCourseWare was being launched a project called the Open Knowledge Initiative, which was about open architecture, saying people, faculty create all kinds of applications, and we don't want to be bound by all the layering and thing that lots of commercial packages, etc. do. We want these things we want an ecosystem where privately produced software or openly produced software, all these things can interact with each other depending on the learning need that is needed. So open had to do with content, the courses, the technology. At that time, there was no legal regimen. Downstream, Creative Commons happens. And the success of OpenCourseWare, and this is why the work that is being done at the center and what doing through clicks and everything is so important. The success of OCW was not alone the fact that MIT had all its courses, but that 250 institutions started putting their courses and making it available. That was the movement. The movement is a success. So what you put out through these things is the models that can be emulated, and for change. So that's these are, and then suddenly you realize that you're not the only game in town. You're working with publishers, vendors, partners, and COVID actually really surfaced that beautifully when people said we have to create pods, we have to create intermediate situations. You start saying that there are many actors, not just stakeholders, many actors in delivering the educational experience. The ecosystem becomes a part. And that's the kind of supply dynamics that gives me comfort to meet the daunting demand that we have. So I said the science of learning very quickly on some of these things. Lot is known, and this and is an educational school, so I have to be very careful about what I say. But actually, there's a lot that's been drawn upon from brain science, cognitive science. Some of the obvious things that were not so obvious before, and I like yesterday also was making reference. We knew about learning curves. We didn't know much about forgetting curves. That there's decay, and so if you look at that on the chart over there about recall, the fact that through when you intersperse testing and feedback, then downstream recall is better. So if you look at immediate recall without that, it seems high. That's the first gray bar that you see. But if you go down, you see that intermittent test and feedback, the recall downstream is better. We did not know that. So which is why if you look at this over here, the red line, which is the shape of the forgetting curve, if you look at stuff, the purple line, which is the line that represents the forgetting curve with testing, with interspersed learning, see how much gentler the slope has become, right? We did not know that. So which is why when we construct the mind wandering, we talk about mind wandering, people have mind wandering, how can it be leveraged? What do you do in order that it becomes part of the learning equation, the learning practice equation? So the part about all of this is we suddenly learned, which is why do we do 6-minute videos or short videos? Why do you have this frequent formative testing? It is not because it's cute to do, because now what digital technology allows us to do is saying, well, if you have to do frequent testing and you have to do it with 400,000 people, you're not going to have a teacher do this. Digital technology comes in. So technology allows you to implement at scale the things that you learn from learning science about good teaching learning practices. And that is the thing, which is why the danger when we all rushed to go online, to go for business continuity reasons, is if we do not reconstruct those experiences, we were saying, people have become much better disposed, hopefully, towards looking at technology. So it is our responsibility now that what we employ technology for embraces good learning practices. So we re-engineer, reconstruct courses so that we can actually provide quality at scale. And that's the sort of the opportunity before us. So we have actually created a center. It's called the MIT Integrated Teaching Learning Initiative at MIT. It's led by Professor John Gabrielli, who's a brain science cognitive scientist, right? And this is the research work that they do. We draw upon their work and the work that's been going on in the world in order to think about how do we do that so that when you create an online course, it is not a transplanting of what was done old, but a re-engineering of the course to involve these principles, to learn what we have learned about learning and be able to deliver it. Okay. So what this really allows us when you looked at it is it gives us these options. How do we judiciously combine on-site and online in order to suit different situations, different learners, right? Different contexts. So the biggest win over there is when you have to meet the needs of differentiated learners, different kinds of learning domains. We have choices now to blend on-site, online in interesting, careful, judicious ways. So what does this new, very technology-centric landscape look like? And what I have there, and I'll apologize, these are largely examples drawn from the things that have been launched at MIT. I want to talk about one or two just to paint this picture. So we have already talked about AR and VR, and one of the things we have launched is, and we have to be careful and about what we are doing with these, so that it moves beyond cute things. to real things. How do we use augmented reality? In fact, Padma challenged me this morning because of something she had seen. I said, well, look at it if you can use, you're looking at a tree, and these are real examples. You're looking at a tree. Can I, through augmented reality, even through a cell phone, look at the capillaries to understand more deeply about capillary action in the trees? So how do you juxtapose the virtual and the physical to understand processes better, not to just put off a very empowering, sound rich, visual rich, artistically rich visualization, which doesn't say anything, but to use it constructively for these kinds of purposes. And one of the things, and I have made a promise to introduce this person to the center, is because this center looks at, how can the future of learning be affected by these? We have created virtual reality situations, for instance, to introduce teachers to the kinds of biases, that they might encounter in the classroom, whether it is, gender biases or math deficiency people have. How do you expose them and have reactions to that in these virtual simulated environments as part of the teacher preparation thing? And biases are a particularly tricky domain. Unconscious biases. How do you bring this out to create the simulated environments, right? We have, so various things I'll talk about AI stuff. For instance, so this is the advanced center, the kinds of things that, looking at misinformation, simulated experiments that presents different kinds of situations and gives people that experiential exposure. The program. So remember, I said that everything from lectures to credentials is prone to innovation. This is a program that I'm very proud of for MIT. So this is a MicroMasters program. Quickly, how many of you have heard about this program in this audience? I see one person. I would encourage you to look at it, and this is a model to think about. So the MicroMasters program is a series of 5 courses, MIT courses, and I'm purposely emphasizing that are put online courses, but a series of 5 courses. Anybody in the world can take these courses for free, right? And if you do the course, for credentials, before I oversell, if you want to get particular kinds of credentials, online credentials, there is a fee, right? But you get online credentials. Now, if you want, and there are some qualification requirements, you can opt to do a semester at MIT or in any of many institutions who have signed up for that to get a terminal degree in that field. So you can do, there's a DEDP, Developmental Economics MicroMasters, that Esther Duflo and gang run. So you can do the MicroMasters, you get the online credentials. You can do a semester at MIT. If there are some qualification requirements. If you want a terminal degree in development, if that from Sloan or from the School of, from the economics department, you can get a terminal MIT degree. It's not just an MIT degree. People who want to get a degree from AUC or Rochester, there are many institutions, I think upwards of 65 institutions or some, who take these courses. So we have the first one was in supply chain management. We have in developmental economics, advanced manufacturing, data science. There's a new AI MicroMasters that is just being launched. Probably when I go back, it's available for this fall. So look at this. What has happened over here? Anybody, and the proof was people get these online credentials, just like we were talking about people's disposition towards online education is improved. The marketplace has also voted with its feet. They said, you got online credentials for those things, we'll hire you. IBM hires them. Okay, Infosys hires them. Walmart hires them because they said, in all cases, we don't need that terminal degree, and you've already got the job. I want you to do that. And by the way, these are not shabby courses. These are MIT courses. There are other reputed institutions whose courses have been taken over there. And so what it has done, it has separated learning. You do not have to get admitted to an institution to get a learning experience, okay, or full quality learning experience. You get credentials, so you have separated learning from the institution, you've separated credentials from the institution. But you also say, look, if you want a terminal degree of a particular kind, then you have an, so you do not have to get admitted to get education, you get admitted to a program if you want a particular kind of credential. That's the kind of change, structural change that we're talking about, which is why I use the term disruption. Remember disruptive innovation? And a point that I'll make is disruption is about breaking the structural immutables that we had. In old open education, we talk about access, cost, quality. You increase access, you diminish quality. That's what we used to think. You increase quality, the cost becomes disproportionately high. And what open education said is, no, you can have great quality. It can look like a scalene triangle. You can have great quality with, and with not that much cost. You can have great access without diminishing quality. So now you're saying, look at another level of structural disaggregation. You don't need to get admitted to get educated. You get admitted to a program on a particular kind of credential. So this, and so you're able to, what you're able to do is provide different kinds of pathways, learning, credential opportunities. But it takes a village, as I say, because we have to, these things, this thing became important. That people say, okay, those credentials matter. This is high quality courses. It is not, you can't just offer a MicroMasters program. This is a 5-course sequence. They go through all the rigors of curriculum testing, the curriculum committee. It takes forever to get them. That's why MicroMasters, it takes a long time to get them off the block because it goes through all this rigor, MIT governance rigor, the check, and in other institutions too. So the MicroMasters is another illumination of the change. This is one of our collaborators, and I'm trying to remember if they'd come to our CLIC symposium a couple of years ago. We work with them. They've been a very big supporter of JWell. This is an AI platform that they created, and we've been working with them because this is for what it does. This Yan platform is, so on the one hand, so if you look at this sort of washed out screen over here, you will see one thing, and this is extremely important for the new world. So you look at a person where they're at. I might look at your resume, I might look at your transcripts, I might look at your LinkedIn profile, and out of that, the AI engine extracts. And when I say extract, it's not just brute force AI in semantically rich ways. It says, here are the competencies that are displayed through this person's experience, learning so far. Okay, so you get the competency profile over here. Then you can look at jobs out there in the labor market. You look at monster.com, naukri.com, you look at the government's labor market data, and you say, okay, these classifications jobs require these competencies. Okay, so you have the source, you have the destination. You are what you have, and you have what you need to get to in order to go the direction. And in the middle, you have all these learning resources and assets. You have the TIS courses, you have OpenCourseWare, you have this, you have that, and say, how can I apply this engine to see what concepts are there so that you can figure out the delta between where you are and where you need to go, and provide you pathways saying, take these kinds of sequences, take these kinds of sequences. I have to say, but wait, there's more. But this is the thing is, here comes learning science. I have extracted these assets, right? I can apply learning science to compose different kinds of educationally rich offerings. So there's a course builder with it. And this is what, so the AI engine allows, and we started using it. We had this whole human skills matrix that I'll talk about momentarily, and saying, can we look, if we have this humongous repository of courses, can we figure out, how for different kinds of competencies, how can, and some of these are not, because, typically people will index resources that you have, do some very, very trivial searches. We all know this, we're familiar with computing. It will show you, even when you do a Google search, it will look at titles, it will do some amount of NLP to extract. But when you do good compositional AI, you're able to get some of the themes that you hadn't even understood. And the implication of this, the first time it was told to me, was so nice. Someone has been waiting tables, let us say, as a job, right? And when they look for another job, they think they have to go to the food industry or the hospitality industry. You look at their competencies, you know, service mentality, good relationship management, right? They're able to count quickly the stuff. It is very well suited for some other job, for a help desk job, and they never see that connection. You know, so you certainly surface. I mean, that's another kind of a thing. But the power of the engine is that you can really come up with rich, and you know, I'm even looking at its implications for publication. We all have corpuses of resources, collections. You know, we're building case studies. How can you provide thematic pathways, inroads into the resources we have for learning opportunities? So AR, VR, AI, disruption like that. The bottom line over here is that we can have the relationship between all these entities, the structural relationship is disrupted, leading to the kinds of different opportunities that we want. When we look at those projects that I showed, there are some things that pop up. There are modular experiences, allows agility. They allow you to come in, continuous learning experiences. Those are the characteristics of the new landscape. It allows you to do, like we said with learning, on-site, online, different pathways for different kinds of credentials. You do boot camps and so on. So last 2 points. I know I've really stretched the time a bit off. So with your indulgence, I'll go for a minute and then certainly. So basically, we have to think in all this new landscape, who the new learner, the new teacher is. Some of this we can come through, you know, and we talk about this because we talk about the notion of a network learner as a synthesizer. There's lots of resources, content, communities online. How do you be a discerning purveyor of the resources? How do you pull them? How do you synthesize them in order to construct experiences ourselves? I had not ordered the background music, but this is a wonderful. This is a movie. So, and then, of course, a discussion there, which we'll get into later on. And yesterday, when we were talking with the students, it came up in light of this: who's the new teacher? We talk about the learning engineer. I like to draw the metaphor of a modern-day pilot who has to negotiate, navigate all kinds of data, deal with lots of tools in order to land different kinds of students, you know, successfully. But the one last thing that in all this, remember we talk about agility, and I saw some faces nodding. It's trying to create, you know, what are the enduring competencies that we want, which are more than domain competencies. And we see this, which will take, you know, we talk about metacognition, learning to learn, values-based education. What are some of these human skills that will help you negotiate and navigate different kinds of learning needs, opportunities over time? And this, again, this is from George's book. When they surveyed chief learning officers at various corporations, they said, you know, we want to develop mindsets. You know, in the new landscape, you have to think about the new landscape. Who's the new learner in this landscape? And these are adult working learners. The focus is again on mindsets. You know, the methods are atomized, modular, right? And you want to make sure that people think more strategically. And I know, and in education, we all know this, but we want to be mindful of this as we think. And I will stop. This is, I mean, my hope. I like to say many, this is such an old slide in the early days of distance education. And, you know, at those days we talk about how distance education has to move from being a second-class citizen as the essential way in which learning is delivered. And we are seeing this. We're talking of hybrid, etc. We are talking about a 5-year program to a lifelong program. Sometimes we say, don't get admitted to an institution, become a member of an institution. Maybe you come for 3 terminal degrees in your lifespan, 70-year life. You know, you think about your lifespan. So these are the changes we can hope for and hopefully co-construct as we look for a preferred future. Thank you all. You've been very patient.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Vijay Kumar.
My pleasure.
Yeah, but you have, I think, opened a lot many questions in the mind of the audience, and I'm mindful of that. But we have 4 panelists, and I would like to, if I can, you know, invite the panelists to take the dais there along with Professor Vijay Kumar. Kindly Please be seated. I continue to sit here.
Why don't you come over here?
No, that would be great. No, because, I can also hear you all well. And so we have Mr. Nipun Vinayak, Mr. Vipul Shah, Dr. Padma Sarangpani, and Diksha Rehal to please take the dais and along with Professor Vijay Kumar. I think we have the mics there. And I would like Dr. Amina Charania to please introduce the panelists so that everyone can, Diksha, please, you can take your seat. So, Amina, please do the honors.
Briefly introduce all the panelists. Dr. Nipun Vinayak, IS is a medico by education and bureaucrat by profession. He has been working in the field of public administration for the last 21 years and has diverse experiences varying from planning and program implementation to health and family welfare. He has authored 5 books on education, health, sanitation, urban governance, and regulatory administration. Presently, he is serving as Executive Director of Maharashtra State Faculty Development Academy, established last year to train teachers in the higher education institutes in accordance with the National Education Policy. So, welcome, Dr. Nipun. We have Mr. Vipul Shah. He's a head of Association for Computing Machinery, CS Pathshala, and many of the students must have heard this from the classes. An initiative to bring computational thinking to schools in India through a modern computing curriculum. Under the initiative, 15,000 teachers have been trained on computational thinking through 130 plus global CSR training programs. Mr. Shah is head of education and skilling and principal scientist at Tata Consultancy Services, where he's serving from the last 32 years. So I have a very long introduction for Padma, but she doesn't need any introduction in this group. So I'm sorry, I just have to open the introduction on my phone. It's really long and evidence, so I just want to cover. Padma Sarangpani is Professor of Education and the Center Chair. She has been Dean of School of Education and she has led the CLICS initiative that we all know. CLICS initiative has also won UNESCO King Hamad Prize of Excellence and also Open Education Consortium Award for collaboration in development of OERs. She has been recipient of numerous academic fellowships, including the Commonwealth Fellowship and the Indira Gandhi Memorial Fellowship. She has been an expert with the UNESCO Teacher Task Force. I'm going to stop here, and she's also serving in the NCT Committee for Teacher Education. And with that, I'll go to our last panelist. Diksha Rehal is ex-master's student in education. And now she's back with us, joining as CLICS coordinator. Last year, she has also worked in QMath, which is one of the world's leading live platforms for math skills. So welcome, panelists, and I hand it back to the...
Thank you, Amina, for introducing the panelists. I would like to just ask the panelists to take about 5 to 6 minutes to respond to any of the issues or aspects raised by Professor Vijay Kumar in his talk. And then I would like to open it for some Q&A from the audience. Before we close, the thundering is anyway telling us that the environment is turning a little difficult. Yeah, so please, maybe we can ask Dr. Vinayak to open.
Hello, thank you. Is it okay? Can you move the camera on the side so that I can see the people I'm talking to? Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to this talk. Thank you, sir. दो तीन चीजें जो मुझे लग रहा है वो मैं कहना चाहूँगा. एक तो टेक्नोलॉजी के पॉजिटिव एस्पेक्ट्स जो हैं वो हम डिनाई नहीं कर पाते, और पर्सनली मुझे लगता है लर्निंग एट one's own pace is one very important part. एक कैनवस बड़ा हो जाता है तो आप एक कॉलेज के बियॉन्ड नेशनल इंटरनेशनल क्या हो रहा है, ऑल दैट प्रोबेबली इज एक्सेसिबल टू यू. कॉस्ट के बारे में भी डॉक्टर विपुल ने कहा, आई हैड दिस इन माय माइंड वेदर it would reduce cost and is it available at a low cost to everyone, but he said that as numbers increase probably cost comes down. और AR और VR जैसी चीजें for many types of professional education, से मैं डॉक्टर हूं तो समझ सकता हूं कि आप एक मशीन पे अगर ऑपरेशन करने का प्रैक्टिस कर सकते हैं, then why kind of use live patients. And then probably it brings in a system which, as he mentioned, brings in inclusion. तो कम से कम कंप्यूटर तुम्हारी जाति और तुम कहाँ के हो नहीं पूछ रहा है. So probably that is the positive part, and therefore we also as a training academy do trainings on scaling up MOOCs on cutting edge technologies. लेकिन क्योंकि थोड़ा डिसरप्ट करना चाहिए आपने बताया है, तो 5-6 सवाल जो हैं एजुकेशन के वो जरूर रखना चाहूँगा मैं फॉर योर थिंकिंग. एक तो which all starts from learning versus education. तो सॉरी, लर्निंग वर्सेस टीचिंग भी, मतलब हम लोग पढ़ा कैसे अच्छा पाए वर्सेस कौन क्या सीख रहा है. उस पर एक बहुत अच्छी किताब है, आई विल जस्ट रीड आउट अ टेक्स्ट फ्रॉम दैट. दिस बुक इज कॉल्ड समर हिल. शायद आप में से बहुत सारे लोगों ने पढ़ी होगी. इट सेज द फंक्शन ऑफ अ चाइल्ड इज टू लिव हिज ओन लाइफ, not the life that his anxious parents think he should live, not a life according to the purpose of the educator who thinks he knows what is best. All the interference and guidance on the part of adults only produces a generation of robots, which some people might like. But he says, and I quite agree to what he says, you cannot make children learn music or anything. You cannot make them learn. So I'm coming to learning versus teaching, without to some degree converting them into will-less adults. You fashion them into acceptors of the status quo, a good thing for a society that needs obedient sitters at dreary desks, standers in shops, mechanical catchers of the 8:30 suburban train, a society, in short, that is carried on the shabby shoulders of the scared little man, the scared to death conformist. तो मुझे लगता है कि लर्निंग वाला जो पार्ट है उस पे अगर हम फोकस छोड़ देते हैं तो हम कंफ्यूज करने लगते हैं कि लर्निंग कर्व कैसा है और फॉरगेटिंग कर्व कैसा है. आप जो सीखते हो आप भूलते नहीं हो. इफ यू लुक एट इट लर्निंग, आप जो रट्टा मारते हो वो भूल सकते हो. सपोज मैंने सीखा है कि एजुकेशन में सबकी बात सुननी चाहिए, तो ये बात शायद मैं भूलूंगा नहीं, मेरा विचार इस पे बदल सकता है, माई व्यूज कैन चेंज, बट आई विल नॉट फॉरगेट. एंड हमारे कॉलेजेस में या हमारी यूनिवर्सिटीज में व्हाट टू लर्न कब से इंपॉर्टेंट हो गया. आई मीन, वेयर इज द लिमिट ऑफ नॉलेज इफ दैट्स व्हाट वी आर टॉकिंग ऑफ, और स्किल्स. मैं तो कॉलेज में इसलिए आया हूं ना कि मैं कैसे सीखूं ये सीख सकूं. मैं क्या सीखूं सीखने के लिए नहीं आया हूं. वो आप मुझे सिखा नहीं सकते, वो आपको भी पूरा नहीं आता है. सो हाउ डू वी मूव टू दैट? एंड देयरफॉर कमिंग टू द पर्पस ऑफ एजुकेशन, जो आपने बताया कि स्माइल एक शब्द आया है जो बच्चों के चेहरे पे आना चाहिए. नाउ ऑल और मोस्ट ऑफ द वर्ड्स व्हिच वी यूज just snatches smiles. तो आप एक ओवर कॉम्पिटिटिव, ओवर स्किल्ड वर्ल्ड बना रहे हो जो आपकी इंडस्ट्री को फीड करेगा। मतलब हम लोग यूथ डेवलपमेंट के बारे में एक संस्था है निर्माण करके उनके साथ काम करते हैं, एंड दे आर सेइंग दैट वी वांट टू लुक एट यूथ बियॉन्ड वोटर्स एंड बियॉन्ड कंज्यूमर्स। अब एक नया चैलेंज आ गया बियॉन्ड एम्प्लॉइज, क्योंकि सब कंपनीज को जो स्किल्स चाहिए आप वही सिखा दीजिए, सबको वो करना है, सब चीजें करियर से ओरिएंटेड है। मतलब ये मशीन है कि आप बच्चा यहाँ से डालिए और वहां से पैकेज लेके बाहर निकलना चाहिए। हाउ इज दैट द पर्पस ऑफ एजुकेशन? So if we are into learning, then we need to know what promotes learning and what kills learning. Any kind of fear kills learning. All authority kills learning. तो उस हिसाब से आपका सिस्टम अच्छा है, शायद डरा नहीं रहा, एक्सेप्ट मे बी कॉस्ट ज्यादा होगी तो डर लग सकता है। बट why are we not talking of those factors? Why are we not talking of challenging authorities? हम टिस में तो probably disagree कर सकते हैं। In a normal college, we do not grow up learning to ask questions, learning to disagree with our teachers, because वो fail कर देगा. And therefore we only become conformists, and then you try to teach us innovation. जिसको thinking ही नहीं सिखाया आपने या think करने नहीं दिया, उसको बाद में आप innovation के courses कराते हो। मैं अगर बाहर जाता हूँ म्यूजिक क्लास करने या डांस करने, तो मेरा टीचर एक ऑर्डिनरी कॉलेज का कहता है नहीं तुम मत जाओ, मेरा प्रैक्टिकल अटेंड करो। तो मैंने वो सब तो कुछ सीखा नहीं। फिर बाद में आप वर्कशॉप्स करते हो ऑन सोमेटो सेंसरी, देयर आर वर्कशॉप्स कि आप आंखें बंद करके टच करो तो आपको टच फील हो। यू आर टेलिंग दैट मशीन्स आर टॉकिंग टू मशीन्स, ह्यूमंस आर नॉट टॉकिंग टू ह्यूमंस। अभी मैं एक उदाहरण देता हूँ। सर फॉर एग्जांपल आने से पहले हैदराबाद जाने वाले थे। आई मीन दिस जस्ट केम अप एंड प्रॉब्ली आई कैन स्टॉप एट दैट। आप वो एयरपोर्ट पे कभी गए होगे तो आपको पता है ना, एक छोटा जैसे बैटरी तो नहीं है आपके लगेज में, पावर बैंक्स नहीं है, फिर वो साइन भी करा लेते हैं। सर के बैग में एक टूथब्रश आ गया जिसमें कुछ तो भी टेक्नोलॉजी होगी, उनको चढ़ने नहीं दिया हवाई जहाज। he missed going to Hyderabad because they said नहीं आपके बैग में एक कुछ तो भी टेक्नोलॉजी वाली चीज है which is risky etc. अरे उसको निकाल दो, इनको जाने दो, वो यूएस से आए हैं शायद। ऐसे ह्यूमन बीइंग्स हम बना रहे हैं जो कॉमन सेंस को तो बिल्कुल साइड पे रख देते हैं। टेक्नोलॉजी, रोबोट्स, and will that serve the purpose? Is education about all that? Is what we also need to see. I mean, it's good they are trying to do AR, which is which reality, augmented or virtual, but reality को तो मत छोड़ दो। And I think I have spoken enough. I should stop. Thank you.
To you, Mr. Shah, or you want to respond?
No.
I think, yeah, let's listen to all and then.
Okay. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. And I really enjoyed your talk. And not just because you called all of us futuristic, and I happened to be seated there and I also became futuristic, but I really enjoyed the talk. I'll start with what you ended with. You said that towards tomorrow. I think I wish tomorrow was today, right? So I think that's where we need to be, and I wish it were today. So I think few things that you spoke about, I just wanted to go over that. You spoke about, at the beginning, spoke about AR, VR, and you gave a very nice example through which our workers were, the morale increased because they were able to get a feel of, they were able to visualize what they were working on, get a bigger picture. Can we do something similar for students, for the learning that they are going through? Do they get a picture or bigger picture of how it is contributing towards their development, what they are studying? If you ask anybody, any topic that they're studying, they don't, their reason would be, I really don't know why I'm studying this. It goes back to the point that you were making earlier. They are not able to relate to many of the topics that they are studying during their engineering or any other courses. How does it contribute towards that? And can such technologies be used towards that? You spoke about displaced learners. Spoke about geographically displaced, vocationally displaced, and many other displacements. What actually I would like to talk about today is about another kind of displacement. There are a lot of learners who come from disadvantaged background, right? They come from the socially, economically weaker sections of society, and it's the circumstances which make them displaced, right? And so, what is it that we can do when we speak about learning, when we speak about open educational resources, when we speak about, when you spoke about several things towards the end, saying that these learners are networked, they can be critical thinkers, they can be system thinkers. What are these learners all about, right? What are these learners who are coming from the socio-economically weaker section of society about? Now, one of the programs that we run at TCS is working with the marginalized, working with the socio-economically weaker sections of the society, students who come from that background, and providing them some necessary skills. And what we notice is one of the critical skills that they lack is communication, right? And I think this becomes very important. It's very easy to say, oh, communication skills, but now think about it. If I lack communication skills, if I'm not confident enough to communicate with others, how do I consume resources that are available? How do I start searching for these resources? How do I know where to look for these resources? There are tons and tons of resources available on, right? Like, how do I select which some from them, right? How do I know which ones of them are quality resources, right? Let's say now I've crossed that hurdle. I've gone over that. I've signed up for something. Now the problem starts. How do I comprehend the resources that I'm consuming, right? Let me now, I'm just putting this in the context of India and learners from India coming from this thing. Now, a lot of resources are being created, and I'm quite happy. There are several initiatives. NPTEL has been creating several resources. And in fact, I was talking to someone yesterday who was deeply involved in that. And I understand that, they are trying to address the learning needs. And what they have done is they have regional language ticker, and they have taken a lot of effort to take English transcript, create that, proofread that, and then translate to other languages. But is that's a great initiative. But what do the learners need? This is something using which they can understand. What about them communicating back? What about them asking somebody if they have any doubts or questions? If I am not confident to communicate, and there the language of communication is more likely to be English, even if my ticker is in Marathi or Gujarati or whatever the language may be, I am not confident. I don't know how to. Am I likely to ask questions? If I don't ask questions, and this is an informal virtual platform, right? And I'm talking about this model where we are talking about open resources. We are talking a lot of, we are expecting the students to communicate on virtual forums with virtual people whom they never meet in person. How confident will I be in communicating with them, right? So what I'm trying to say is what can be done to address the needs of these learners so that they can overcome the hurdles, overcome the displacement that you spoke about, the circumstantial displacement that they came with, through technology, through other means. What is it that we need to do from an industry perspective? What is it that we can do from educational institute perspective to enable these learners to I think Shalini spoke about inequities at the very beginning. So how do we address the inequities that are inherently in the system for this? And I think it continues further. If I look at assessment, all the way the material has been created, keeping a certain kind of profile of students, right? Now, again, my profile of students has changed. Assessment become a challenge. One thing which was, again, these are some things that I've learned over a period of time since I've been interacting with colleges and students. We found that there was a lot of dropout when we were conducting sessions for students. And it's very easy for one to go and say, oh, maybe there's a dropout because you're doing a session for free. And there's no value for free education that is provided, right? But when you probe deeper, you suddenly start finding cases where you get to know that, because the student is coming from a disadvantaged background, there are other things the student needs to do. The student, he or she needs to take care of the family. They may be working a job to support their studies. So the time that is available to them is limited. And if we then do an additional course or additional work that they need to do outside of their the hours that they spend in the college is going to be limited. So how do we address that? What kind of, you spoke about credentials earlier, and what kind of credentials then are available wherein these courses become integrated into their learning itself and are not seen as something out, that they have to do in addition to what they are doing. Are then these recognized universally? That again, I know that there are certain things that are happening in the country and there are very good things happening. But let me tell you, I just noticed that written here, the communication skills, I just wanted to touch upon that. We did a study on this, uh, placing students on the Common European Framework for Reference at the scale A1, A2 scale. And we found that a large number of students were even below A1 level in English, right? So then it just gets back to the level of the content, what level should it be developed at? So I think I've taken a lot of time. I just wanted to, one last point I'd like to just share with you, that there are a lot of efforts underway. NPTEL is doing a lot of good work by making resources available, quality resources available. There is a course at IIT Madras, BSc Programming and Data Science. I think they are democratizing education. 12,000 learners are signed up for that. And I think that has become quite successful. And I wish we can do more and more of such courses where from quality courses, institutions, learners can sign up, like you mentioned about learners signing up for at MIT and getting micro masters. So I think more of these need to be done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Again, many other issues highlighted, and we'll have Professor Vijay Kumar respond a little later, maybe, and not one-on-one perhaps, but some of these issues. But before that, Professor Sarang Pani.
Yeah, I think now it will work. So I want to invite you to respond to three ideas or thoughts. The first thing that struck me was the importance of being on campus as an essential experience of higher education. And I think actually I learned it from you. When we began MA Education Elementary, and I had an early conversation with you on our aspiration to use technology to achieve pacing in education and keep in touch with learners when they're not on campus. You pointed out to me that it's really important to build community among learners and to build them into a community which can then carry into the period when they're not on campus. We took your advice seriously, and I think it was really an important learning for us. It's not only building the community, but enabling an identity, enabling learners to inhabit the identity of being a learner and inhabit the identity that the institution bestows on them, which are very important ways in which people learn to aspire and learn to become. And higher education is a very important phase for that to happen. And it is through that that many people really transform their lives and possibilities for themselves. So I think this is really an important feature that I think we need to keep in mind as we are thinking about technology itself. How do we enable this identity formation to accompany the experience of higher education? The second really important thing that we made into an integral part of CLICS was the importance of social capital and access to social capital. And that, I think, even more than content, seems to be central in the possibilities of knowledge enabling you to actually achieve new things. Becoming a knower is equally about becoming a part of a community, whether it's a disciplinary community or it is the peer group on the campus. These memberships and communities are very, very essential. And in fact, in this, we began in CLICS to experiment, how can technology enable us to expand access to communities, which are otherwise like exclusive places on universities. I mean, the cost of entering into a university as a full-time student is extremely high. And very few people can take off to be full-time members of university spaces. Most people can't afford it. Uh, we see it in TIS all the time, and it's absolutely true in state universities. So we've been really thinking, can we use technology as ways of building communities that are authentic communities and devolve social capital? And I think this is really important, and I feel a lot more we need to do to understand the transformative potential of experiences in higher education. The third is the need for us as members of higher education to be in the forefront of innovating on how we integrate technology into the space of the university, not just picking up products that vendors are peddling to us, but actually defining and shaping the direction. I think when I envied the opportunity you had at MIT to define what technology will do for you at that university and discover new things that are possible, so that we don't just reinvent the face-to-face classroom in this digital mode, but we're really discovering new ways of being, but through our research efforts and through conviction that it actually works. We're not buying some vendor's selling line that, do things this way. We are invested and we have arrived at this insight. And I feel the need for us to do that. I mean, we had this opportunity. We have this opportunity in the center with clicks to discover how to ourselves drive and shape the use of technology as we reach out to new kinds of learners, enable them to become participants in higher educational experiences. And I think we just need to have a lot more of that. It's a matter of concern that as members of the developing world, we're really being, the sector is being shaped by vendors. And I think we should be concerned about it. And I'm really wondering, how can we create more sites which address contextual issues and enable many more, enable us to become actors in the space and not just users of products that are being developed elsewhere.
Thank you, Professor Sarangpani. Again, a set of very thoughtful questions. Diksha, over to you.
Hello. So my thoughts on your talk are a mix of Dr. Nipun's and Dr. Padma's views. As said that technology certainly gives you a lot of flexibility, like to share from my experience. Like before TIS, I did masters in physics from IISc Bangalore. And being there at such an eminent institute, still I had that choice that if I'm not liking the way a professor is teaching, I can access, actually I did access MIT courses for mathematics. And over the last 6-7 years, I have seen how these courses have evolved, EDX, and how we can get credentials added to your LinkedIn profile, and you can get that sort of whatever competencies or skills companies are looking for. You can map those, and that has removed my fear of job, because I know like myself that I learn. There are platforms to learn if I want to go into a certain field. So it gives me that sort of freedom. But at the same time, I'm also very skeptical because I'm a first generation graduate. So I think, who are the people who are adapting to what this economy is offering? Like if you see at this moment, there's a much demand for data scientists, and top institutes in the country are offering courses for that. So we also need to see that can technology be in some ways also discriminatory? We need more research in that aspect as well. That's what I feel. And I also want to share one of the thoughts of my batchmate. She said it is quite possible that a point will come when the technology will be for masses and only certain privileged people will get access to a teacher or a facilitator in a physical setting. So this was about the adaptive part. You also said that we need to be futuristic in our approach. I was thinking, like, what kind of system we will want. And as I'm sitting at TESS, the first word that comes to my mind is empowerment. The system that makes me feel empowered. So for that, as Padma ma'am shared, but who is creating that sort of system? Is it some vendor providing some sort of course? So we also need to be aware of that aspect. And we can't just take it for granted that universities are also very inclusive spaces. They have their own set of issues. So that we need to take care of. And you were talking about inclusive, it will help us, technology can help us to reach out to children with disabilities. So I was thinking about the word inclusive technology, but as Dr. Nipun is here, so the other word that came to my mind is participative. Can we say something like participative technology, in which the participants are also an important stakeholder in the decision-making process, what you are offering? And my learnings from the COVID has been that, like, this is an inclusive space, otherwise also. But what happened during COVID is that all of us were going through, like, if I define it as an enemy, so we were all getting affected at the same time, maybe to different extents, but everyone was getting affected. So that also helped people to do that. But can technology help us in addressing other challenges, like in which not all the people are getting affected? Like Vipul sir talked about marginalized people. Then in India, caste dynamics is there. So yeah, at this point, I can say how technology will solve this, but why not? We can also like give a thought to that aspect. So yeah, that's all.
I think our panelists have given a lot of new ideas and dimensions also to touch upon. And I'd like to ask Professor Vijay Kumar to maybe in very brief, may not have to answer each and every, but a little bit of, broad issues that have been raised. And then I can ask maybe just 3 questions from the audience because of time constraint.
Okay, yeah, thank you. First of all, such terrific comments. I'm not going to, I don't even remember all the questions. I remember the sensation of yes, yes, as I'm listening around. So, I mean, but it is important to sort of emphasize what, Nipunji was saying, because I was thinking about confidence, and it connects some notions, about giving children or the learners confidence. Yesterday, I made this joke. We were talking about similar things, about how my father tried to teach me probability and statistics when I was a kid. And all I saw was an angry guy yelling at me, do this, do this, do this. But then I also, it was just fear, and it choked. But I also remember a time when I sat with him and we used to do, there was this Loney trigonometry, and we used to sit and do all the problems, that almost like play with, each other, and how that thing stuck because we played with, right? And that's the environment that we're creating. One of the things I want to say based on all this stuff that we're talking about, we have to keep on remembering that the issue is not technology. The issue is learning. I remember there was a vision or creating good learning experiences. There was a time when we used to do all these futures panel and conferences, or phone and said, So what is your vision for academic computing? So without thinking, I said that it should go away. Meaning, you want it so much ingrained key. We're not talking about academic computing or technology, but different kinds of, these are just artifacts. But where that confidence part, at MIT, we say one thing, and you might have seen it in the class. We say nothing goes unchallenged, even though, so you want to cultivate that condition that nothing goes unchallenged. Although we say that, but everybody didn't go to charm school, so they don't always know how to politely challenge, because some ego and all gets in the way. But this notion of confidence, and if you think about it, the confidence comes when you have communities that you identify with. What are communities? It's a fail-safe places. There are people like you with whom you have created trust relationships, where people allow you to fall down, tell you how to pick yourself, the coaching, the friendship, and it's very telling. And so it's that kind of confidence that Nipun was talking about, that communities allow you to have because you create, and you can create them online, you can create them on site. And the part about that also is, and we were again talking about this yesterday when we said that most of us in education, we have some good ideas, but we treat everyone as in the language of education, as an expert learner. Whereas in this new world, we're all novice learners. And we forget that novice learners need a lot of hand-holding, a lot of putting your hand on the shoulder and saying, don't worry, it's okay to fall down. When the first edX course, when Anant Agarwal, this thing they did, there were 2 instructors, 2 TAs, and let's say about 200,000 students, right? And they thought that was a one-to-many experience within 2 weeks. And the numbers are, lagbhag. Within 2 weeks, they find that there are already 400 communities that are formed, right? Some are language-based communities, for different kinds of things. And because they become the support systems, they talk with each other, they know how to talk about problems, etc. And it speaks to all those items about confidence, about knowing that you'll be understood. Okay. And one last point, which goes to something important, and this is a novice learner thing that you talked about. We did this, there was a program that we did, which was supported by the Gates Foundation with community colleges. And what we said was, look, the cost of textbooks, the cost of education, Padma was making reference to cost of higher education here, that it's very, very prohibitive, mainly because in the United States, textbooks are awfully expensive, right? So we said, look, if you use open education resources, the cost can come down. You have to make a commitment that for all the math education, you use this. We said OCWME, all these resources are there. So we did that, but what we found out was the problem was not that there are all these courses available. They could not access them because what they needed was remedial mathematics and remedial reading and writing. It doesn't matter if you have that you are not prepared. So you have to think about what are the success courses for, and this is becoming very clear when we deal with audiences, with refugee education. People need different kinds of pathways. The hope that I have is now in an efficient, bureaucratically efficient way, if you will, we can provide these alternative pathways. You don't get this, go do that thing, come back over here. You don't have to all do it now. So those opportunities, this learning to be, I cannot, yesterday also, I mentioned this, that it is not about learning about a topic, learning about a subject, but learning to be the practitioner that you want. So these are extremely good aspirations for the world but I will emphasize that the discussion is about education, big E education, small t technology.
I think this is the time to open the audience for some questions. I will just take 3. So 1, and there's one there, 2, and a third hand. Okay, 3. Fine. Please introduce yourself and be very specific about the question rather than, create a big narrative. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm Rafiq. I work at CT. So my question is about this one. I feel that certification model. So basically, you do any course, or it can be online or even other course. At the end, you get a certificate, and that is tied to then assessment, and then assessment dictates whatever is taught and whatever what you focus on. So in futuristic, when we are thinking about the future, so what do you think about what is the what this model will survive, or what will happen to it? Because I feel that that is the blockage which would affect whatever you do. Because right now, ultimately, you have to show that certificate uh, as a proof that you did some course, not maybe something which you learned, or some other proof like some product you created.
Would you like us to have all the three questions, because there could be sometimes interconnections? Yeah, here and then the third question.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Kamlesh and I'm working here at CET. So basically all question and answers has already discussed. So I just want to ask a very specific question that we know that everybody, when we talk about this technology, and we obviously hear about digital divide, and we always hear about digital literacy, and we can say global divide of literacy and digital. So looking at these challenges to make this IT more inclusive, equitable, and quality of education and quality of things to all, what we can do about to address these issues? Just the digital divide and the digital literacy gap. So very specific.
Hello, good evening, professors. Thank you so much, panelists, for the invigorating talk. I had a question. I don't know how relevant it is, because being a student throughout the COVID pandemic time, and also having taught a few online courses in an edtech, I always wondered, since we constantly talked about confidence and the art of communicating, I wonder how much, if suppose through mocks, or for example, the course that I taught was a public speaking course for students in school. So when we are teaching it online, I always wondered whether the confidence that they develop, even if they say learn the debating skills or other public speaking skills, is that confidence, would it reflect back when they come back out in the society, in the real world? Because most of the times, even when we are texting to people or talking to people via online mode, it's sort of a mask. You have some sort of a confidence which you might not have when you are out there in the real world. So does technology give you that sort of a mask or a fake sort of a confidence which you might not have in the real world? Thank you.
Kim, you didn't say that.
Sorry, my name is Andrea. I'm from the B.Ed M.Ed first year course.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, Professor Vijay Kumar, you have these three brilliant questions.
Very quickly, let me, and I'm going to talk about false positives, right? That about certification. So if your assessment is going, you say you are what you measure, it's a matter of this. When you talk about certification credentials, right? What is a certification? It's a statement of assurance, let us say, that this person who went through this regimen, this practice, we can, as an institution, reasonably assure the purchaser of the system that she or he can do the following things, display some competence. It's a very general statement, right? Over time, what have you seen? We talk about the fact that, oh, you educate these people, the guy get a degree, but they're no good for our industry. They're not good for the workplace. So you started trying to do more mapping between the kinds of things that the workplace needed. Okay. But you said that, look, I can't have this very highly bundled thing called a degree and have it individually meet all these needs. It's difficult to aggregation. So you said, okay, let's, unbundle this So credentials, online credentials, topical credentials, badges, certifications, you started saying, look, there can be different kinds of assurance for much more modular atomic competencies that you can match. So the whole realm of certification credential has expanded, and that's a good news. And then you also look at equivalencies and interoperabilities between them. There's a whole initiative around credential interoperability. In the old days, we used to think about even course transfers, even within the same system and institution. Right? I find it wonderful when I can say in the old days. But the thing is, now we have these badges, credentials, right? For different, NIIT might give you a certificate, very, very topical kinds of things. But the fact is that it has to, and why I bring it to false positive, it has to be based on the outcomes that you desire. Now, in the past, there was, I believe, and it's subject to debate, a valid comment, that educational systems are largely self-referential. We educate, we test, we say this is good enough or not, right? And now you're saying that, let's get more inputs from the world to inform what we measure. Now that said, I want to make one statement and then I'll get to the other false positive. But, there was a professor in mechanical engineering who did a study because, we were in the faculty committee and all, we were having an argument about how students are always studying to the tests, right? And it's, students are always studying for the exam. So this guy said, look, I've done a lot of things. What's wrong with that? He says, look, every student is an economic actor. I have that much time, okay, which I have to distribute between my courses, my education, my sports, my extracurricular activities, my friends, my music, my girlfriend, okay? I'm resource allocating. I need some measures according to which I can determine, and this is a very serious apportion. We all think, if you subconsciously we do that, how much time to apportion, and what's going to show up in the test is one way of saying what kind of energy should I be directing towards what, right? It's a mildly caricatured example, but the point to be made over there is don't say that students studying to tests is a problem because that's a natural tendency. You make sure that you develop the tests so that they measure what the things that you want them to learn are, what the outcomes are. So there's a lot of effort over there to be thought. So something to be thought about. Communication skills. When we're talking about confidence, stylish speaking, and there's always this thing, if you speak polished English, they might know nothing. What you learn, and this is, when this conversation about math courses and looking at the course, you have to demonstrate your deeper understanding. It's not about sitting and doing a great PowerPoint slide. Can you answer the next question that is going to come up on that test? So it's the confidence that you display from knowledge about the subject, the confidence that you can demonstrate with evidence, that matters. And what you find in industry, in workplace, is after the first sheen of polished language and public speaking goes, which is not to diminish the importance of that skill. What sustains is, do you really know about that subject? Can you really talk about it? So this is what I think, sometimes I used to have a little disdain for certain kinds of MBA courses because you get the management speak, you get the terms, you get the things, and I said, yeah, but what does it really mean? So watching out for the kinds of educational offerings that serve as false positives, because we do a disservice to the learner by thinking that is equivalent to really knowing the subject. Enough of preaching for the day.
Thank you so much, Professor Vijay Kumar, for taking on the questions, giving the talk, and the panelists raising some very critical issues. Of course, I'm not going to be doing any kind of summing because we have all been very listening to the talk so intently and also following the question answers. I think what is really the value of having this kind of a talk and discussion today is that we are not letting technology get away with whatever it can do in our lives, raising very pertinent questions. also trying to find solutions. And very interestingly, after a long time, I'm hearing some amount of discussion on this learning, teaching, process, and very importantly, the segmentation of the learner, constituency. Who are these learners, and all types of learners, displaced learners, and so on. And it's very important to look at this not exactly just from the point of view of inequities and so on. That's there, but learners themselves are a very heterogeneous, a very a community of their own, and we need to keep them in mind when we are talking about a technology led kind of a learning process. And we probably will also look at this futuristic thing that is not going to go away. It's going to be here because it is serving the needs of at least some types of learners who want to learn at their own pace and perhaps learn, selectively. Not as some of you said, we are forcing them to learn certain things. And as Dr. Nipun says, what are we turning them out to be? Robotics who cannot just take a decision, but follow just certain, SOPs and so on, which is a very sad commentary of things, actually speaking. Also that we have to be very mindful of the fact that in higher education space, especially, how do we continuously be creators, as Padma says, and not just users, and now not allow the market to take away, that kind of agency from us, and, push for a very consumeristic kind of a society, which will also then make us slaves of technology, which will be the sad thing to do. So I think spaces like ours and spaces like, and, centers like what CET does is very important. And I'm very happy that we have Diksha, who's almost like a student still, raised some very pertinent issues, lifelong learner, and raise some very pertinent issues from that point of view, where you ask questions from the stakeholders who are really not just consumers, but who are being forced to use this technology. But I still would say that technology is not just here to stay, but here to serve also, because I maintain that the COVID pandemic and the scene would have been very different if it did not have technology, and if it did not have the agility among universities and among higher education spaces to adapt it so quickly. And I think most organizations did a reasonably good job of it, even though we could not, sort of bridge the digital divide so effectively, I think. And we are mindful of the fact that we probably left behind a lot of them. But this same discussion has given us this opportunity to, do something about it. We are not being, we are not ignoring that question. We are not leaving it behind. And I think, therefore, these kind of discussions and talks are so important. And what I take from your particular talk is that, this is a fine example of making sure that, the conversation is continued and new research keeps happening. And as I said, as a psychology student, after a long time, I'm trying to look at the learning curve and the forgetting curve. And so, because this is very fundamental to understanding how does learning happen. And I think these three questions were also great, because they're talking about, will this world be same when we come out of that, laptop window, be very confident asking questions over the virtual world, but again, not have the same kind of confidence when we are out of it. So for 2 years, some of us have had a very different life. And now when we come out, we suddenly find facing the world, real world, is so difficult. So what Padma says is very important, that the learning in the real world, where human beings live, and when we have to interact with human beings, is so important. So I think it's very important for us to make sure that, learning stays between humans and not between a human and a machine. And I think that's what Diksha said, that, there will be a time, I hope it is not like that, that massification and, in the technology will rule for some, and others will become more and more privileged to have, human interaction. That will be a very sorry state of affairs, I think. But I'm so thankful that we are having this conversation, and I'm sure CET will continue with this kind of a conversation. It's very important for us to not leave aside these questions. And I'm sorry we don't have much time, but I'm sure you would have liked to answer a few more questions, but these are great questions, and we'll probably pose them in different other panels also. And yeah, thank you all very much. And the audience, I think we should give a big hand to the audience. Thank you all.
All right. Amina has assigned me the task of proposing a formal vote of thanks. Please bear with me for another 1 minute. I would begin by thanking Professor Vijay Kumar for spending time with us so generously and being subjected to such a rigorous set of activities ever since you arrived. And I see that the energy that you brought in when you walked into the office yesterday and the joie de vivre which was there yesterday is still not diminished one bit after such long engagements at the center. I thank Dr. Nipun Vinayak for accepting our invitation and coming here and enriching the panel with your observations based on your professional and as well as your passion on teacher education. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you, Mr. Vipul Shah, again for enriching based on your own rich experiences of working in the EdTech space. Thank you, Deeksha, and I must admit that as a teacher, there was immense pride in seeing you up there in the midst of all these eminent panelists. Thank you, Professor Bharat, as usual, for being the bulwark of support and encouragement for CET and taking time off your busy schedule for being here with us. May I please request you to hand over small planters to Professor Vijay Kumar. That is Dr. Vinayak. Mr. Shah. Thank you. She is one of ours. Yeah, but please. Yes, of course. So she gets a special one because she's one of ours. Thank you so much, Professor Bharat. Thank you, Professor Padma, for being you, for creating the space for all of us at the center. No, I'm afraid we don't have anything for Padma. That is definitely not discrimination. And constantly creating these opportunities for us to continually learn and grow. Thank you so much for it. Thank you, the invited audience, and I mean our students also who had to be invited to be here. Thank you for coming. Thank you, our visitors, again, who's taken time to be here with us. And thank you for all of those who have joined online. That is the most difficult part, but they have been listening to the live streaming. And thank you to the CETE family, the faculty and staff. Thank you all.